Neighbor obsessed with me. This happens 4 years ago. I was pregnant and single when I moved into a house owned by my friend's parents. They were wonderful people. The house needed some work, but nothing major and perfect for me. Or so I thought. I live in a medium-big city and never really had much to do with my neighbors. One neighbor was a single male, older than me and always home. I figured he was on disability or something like that, but as I didn't feel the need to be close to my neighbor, I shrugged it off. At some point things started to be a bit weird, notes he put in the mail, looks, etc. I just ignored him and asked my former roommate what she knew. Turns out the guy was funny. Then he started blogging about me, on Facebook on his blog. Things went really bad when my son was born. He wrote the most creepy things. He listens to my every move in my house. The posts got sexually explicit. He tried to force encounters, make contraptions to hang notes over the fence into my garden, etc. I became very unsure and scared, especially when I contacted the police about stalking, and they warned me that if I made an official complaint he would be entitled to know I did and he was known to become violent. I started work to get every type of help I could and had to keep sleeping a night a week in the house so he would keep being triggered to build a case. I was scared shitless he would hurt me or my baby. He kept writing the sexual stories about me, kept observing my every move, commenting on my visitors, etc. At some point I managed to get a new apartment from the council. Due to the dangerous situation, the man is extremely mentally unstable and I avoid my old neighborhood like the plague to this day. Creepy neighbor is stalking me. Background: I, 24F, live with my roommate, 23F, in an apartment in the suburbs of ATL. As you may know, ATL is super dangerous and crime-riddled right now, so we have a Ring peephole camera, perfect for apartments, and a digital lock on our door for safety. Now onto the story. About 3 months ago, the sweet family from across the hall moved out and we got a new neighbor. His name is David, and let's just say he's interesting. When we first saw him moving in, we were a bit taken aback by the sheer amount of stuff he was trying to fit in his one-bedroom apartment. All of it was anime merch and Star Wars memorabilia. Definitely gives me hoarder vibes. But not my business. When the moving trucks left and a few days had passed, my roommate and I knocked on his door to give him a welcome to the neighborhood gift basket with some baked goods, dog treats, and poop bags for his dog, and seasonal candles. Apparently this was not the correct thing to do. After that day, David got creepy. It started out innocent enough. He would come to the door whenever he heard me or my roommate coming or going to have a quick chat, or he would come over regularly to ask for salt or sugar or toilet paper. Sometimes he would ask if we could come over and watch his dog. But, within the past 2 weeks, things have really escalated. 2 weekends ago, we were out pretty late partying at the bars near the Braves Stadium. We ended up getting home around 3 a.m., only to find David sitting at the top of the stairs waiting for us. He acted all upset, asked us where we had been, and requested that we tell him if we are planning to be out past midnight. I laughed in his face, and he called me a mindless Stacy, still not sure what that means. He also asked for access to our Ring camera so he could make sure we are safe. We laughed at him again and went into our apartment. Here's the scary part. We checked the Ring the next morning, and he sat outside his apartment staring at our door for the rest of the night. When we saw that, we contacted the complex to let them know that he was acting crazy. They told us to contact the police. So we did. The police told us to contact them if he made any threats, but since we lived in a shared space, they couldn't do anything until he entered our apartment or threatened us. I assume the complex said something to him because he left us alone for the next 5 days or so. This week, he is out of control. He is constantly sitting outside of our apartment. My roommate has started leaving for work an hour earlier so that she doesn't cross paths with him. I cannot leave the apartment during the day because he is constantly waiting outside for me. He has asked me out, left love letters on our door, on our cars, and in our mailbox. I told him once that I wasn't interested, and he told me that he would KLL himself if I didn't go on a date with him. Of course, I don't have that in writing, so the police won't do shit. He has also put up a Ring doorbell of his own so he can track all of our movements, and will leave really creepy sexual notes when we're gone so we find them when we come back. What do we do? For now, my brother is spending the night on my couch for the next few nights until we can have a sit-down meeting with my landlord. We have collected all of the evidence and ring footage so we can show how much this has progressed. I'm sure the landlord and the police think we're being dramatic little girls or whatever, so we're not going to take no for an answer. Either he leaves or we break our lease and get our full security deposit back. We are also going to file for a temporary restraining order at the very minimum because some of the commenters said that would be faster than going through the police. Again, thank you so much for all of the advice. We met with our landlord last week. Unfortunately, they aren't willing to work with us as much as we expected. They will not remove him from his unit. Since we didn't want to spend a ton of money to move, we asked if we could move units within the complex. The landlord offered us a one-bedroom unit on the terrace level, so my roommate and I would have to share a room in what is basically the basement of our building. Not ideal. We spoke to the police, and they said that the notes and letters weren't enough to get someone on stalking or harassment. Especially since he lives literally 3 feet away from us. He probably just think you're cute. They did keep the ring videos and said that they would contact us sometime this week after they reviewed all of the footage. We have both moved in with my parents for the time being. Shout out to them for being incredible parents. It really sucks spending $2,000 monthly on a place you can't live. We are actively looking for other apartments, but money is tight since we would have to buy out the current lease and pay to start a new one. Also not ideal, so, not the update we were hoping for, but we are both safe now and that's what's important. If anyone has suggestions about raising $5,000 in a month, please let me know. Smiley face. Is my neighbor stalking me? I, 24F, moved into a new neighborhood about 2 years ago, with my partner, 33M, and our child. After 6 months of living here, in the beginning of the pandemic, we started getting to know our immediate neighbors. They seem to be homebodies and stay inside almost all of the time. After a bit they started coming out to talk more and we all seemed to get along. I'd considered inviting them over a few times. But they can be a bit awkward and difficult to keep conversations going with. We've done paint nights outside a few times, but haven't invited each other inside ever. The couple seems to come outside whenever we are outside, coincidentally. They include themselves in our activities and chat here and there. We felt like we've brought them out of their shells and given them some socialization they've needed. Since they dwell inside, in the dark, playing video games constantly, I gave my number to the girl when we had an issue between units, in case of emergencies. We've sent a few messages about the property management, weather, etc., but only a few. Lately, I haven't seen the woman out as much as before. But the guy is outside every time I am. He started sitting in a lawn chair on his front step daily. For hours. Fast forward, a friend of mine comes to spend the night. I introduce the neighbor guy to my friend, to be polite. He meets her dog and says a few random things. Then he's back to sitting on the step for several hours that night. Some days later, he signals me with a fist and asks if everything is okay. I tell him I'm fine and ask what he means. He proceeds to tell me I was sending him mixed signals when my friend was over and he just wanted to make sure I'm alright. Which didn't make a single bit of sense, but I said sorry for the confusion. I assured him I was fine. Went about my business. A couple more days pass. I get a text from him saying who it is and he hopes my child and I have a great day. I didn't give him my number, so I found it to be inappropriate and didn't answer. I started realizing he's been outside in the morning at the time I leave for work daily. He will be outside within 15 minutes of me getting home. Regardless of the time. The guy stays out until 4 a.m. some nights. Crazier part is, he's inside within 20 minutes of me leaving. Will stay outside for 14 full hours as long as I'm home. Doesn't go out if my partner is home and I'm not. Doesn't come out if no one's home. Will know if I'm home even when I switch cars with my partner. I'm uncomfortable but don't want to point fingers and make it worse. But this dude won't talk to my partner, hardly acknowledges him. Meanwhile finds ways to talk to me. Tries to help walk my dogs to the car for me, tries to play games with my child, knocks on my door asking if I've lost random items that aren't mine, and has texted me a few more times. I've seen all of this on my security cameras. Since we've been paying attention to the odd behavior, I can't tell if it's a super weird coincidence or if he's purposefully watching me or something. Not to mention, he makes hand gestures and speaks to himself with no phone out, no headphones. He'll walk a few doors down and visit other neighbors, and he gets the mail, which he's never done, in front of the house I am in. Later, tries to meet those neighbors. I mentioned a yard sale I was having up the road. He never takes walks, but that day he decided to. And I get a new game console. He gives me two $60 games. The other neighbor said he's never sat outside like this before. Not for the past 5 years. His girlfriend has been questioning him about it. I walked out and overheard her upset, with him replying sarcastically, "That's the kind of guy I am." She also mentioned he had his meds changed months ago when an ambulance came for him. Let's not forget, my boyfriend's car tire was randomly slashed in our neighborhood. Am I paranoid over odd coincidences, or do I need to move? My neighbor watches me daily. Yesterday was personally disturbing. A little context. I'm a 19F and moved back into my mother's house late last year. I have a neighbor, a 50-ish or 60-ish M, who I have caught watching me almost every day for the past few months now, maybe since January or February. The way our houses are laid out is a little confusing. My backyard ends on the side of his house and yard, so the back of my house is pointed to the side of his. My room's window faces the back on ground level, so I have a direct view of the side of his property. I hope this made sense. What he will do is stand outside when he smokes, and the whole time his body will be facing my direction. When I first started noticing it, I shrugged it off as him looking at the sky or mountains behind my house, or maybe he was zoned out. But after a while, I noticed that he didn't try to look in any other direction when I'm in my room. Soon, it was just about every day I could count on seeing him outside looking into my window/yard. I was getting sick of it. I started by hiding when I would see him, then shutting the blinds on him and opening them up after he left, then staring back at him, then flipping him off. He knew I had noticed. Now he would scurry away behind the corner of his house when I protested. At this point, he knows I've seen him multiple times and don't like him. Now, yesterday was different. I had taken the screen out of my window so that my cats could come in and out as they please. One has abandonment issues and won't go outside without someone close, so now seeing me through my window was even easier. My younger brother was in the back working on our garden, and I was leaning out the window chatting with him. I looked up and saw the guy, half hidden behind his house, facing right toward me. My annoyance and anger had reached a breaking point. I yelled at him across both properties to stop staring, and he scurried away behind his little corner. My brother and I continued our conversation as it seemed he got the hint. I was wrong. I kept an eye out for him in that corner. I saw him again, this time just the top of his head and eyes as he concealed his body behind his house and leaned as far as he could. My blood ran cold. This guy, who I don't even know and is 3 times my age, is so desperate to just look at me that he can't stop even after being yelled at. I yelled again and he hid again, not saying a word. I was trying to wrap up the conversation between me and my brother so I could shut my window and hide. Once again, I see him, just his head and eyes, staring. I screamed this time and then slammed my window. He cowered off. I wasn't planning on making this post until I saw him doing it again, today. My window was shut and he ran off before I could yell again. I feel sick to my stomach. He won't get the hint. I don't know what to do. I like keeping my blinds open during the day since I keep cacti in my room that need light. Not to mention the lights in my room don't work, so I have to use sunlight anyway. I shouldn't have to change my routine because of a creep. But I don't think I can report him to the police because he is staying on his property, and I don't know if I can legally record him if he's in his yard. I want to knock on his door and tell his wife, but my mom advised me against that. I don't think me giving him a stern talk will do anything other than fuel whatever fantasies he might have of me. It could be dangerous too. This situation is starting to affect my mental health. I'll wake up in the middle of the night convinced someone is right outside looking at me. I can't even change my clothes in my own room anymore because I feel like he's already caught a peek. I don't think ignoring him is an option I can continue. Is there even a way I can help my situation? Update. Oh my God, I am shaking. He was outside shirtless smoking a cigarette. He could tell I saw him. He scurried away and then came back. I grabbed my camera, on Snapchat. I just screamed at him and threatened to call the cops, and he argued back. I think I got the recording, but my phone is so old and laggy that I can't tell if it's saved. I called my mom and told her I was calling the cops. She told me she would come home and talk to me about it before we do. She was brief. I think I am going to head to a friend's house until my mom gets home, so I won't be able to respond to comments very well. Wish me luck. Another update. Mom called again before I left to my friends and allowed me to explain the situation further. She thought I was outside when this happened, I guess, which is why she wasn't urgent. She's told me to stay home and get the house ready for the cops and that I can go ahead and call them now. Final update. So, I called the cops. An officer came over and I showed him from my room where the neighbor stands outside. Basically, he told me to get a curtain and that since he is on his property, he's technically allowed to stand and look in any direction he wants, and it's just unfortunate my window is easy to see into. He can't tell him to not face my house when he smokes outside. I asked the officer to suggest he smokes on the other side of his house or on the front porch, and he said he would talk to him but doesn't expect much to happen. I told the officer I felt it was an invasion of privacy and that this has been occurring for months, that I should be able to live in my room and not be watched. Basically, I guess he has the right to look into my room as long as he is in his yard, and I can't do anything about it legally unless there is solid evidence of intention. I also found out my mom shut off the cameras because it was blowing up her phone too much. If I had a recording of yesterday where he had peeked around the corner, I could have proved intent. Guess I'm out of luck. Never trust your creepy neighbor. After reading some of your guys' stories, I feel ready to share my very creepy and uncomfortable encounter. So this has been a few years since this happened, but to this day, I feel almost sick thinking about that night. When I was in my very early 20s, I lived in some pretty shitty, albeit cheap too, apartments that were known for being a little sketchy for the area. This is the USBTW. There was this neighbor that always seemed to be listening to James Brown and Motown, so even though he seemed a bit off, I thought, how could he be that weird if he's chilling to some old school music? I'd hear him blast his music and have louder conversations, but then again we both had studio apartments that were touching, so I just would play music to not hear his so loudly. One night, he was drinking a lot and had his GF around. You could hear him being belligerent, but nothing that seemed out of the ordinary for him, I suppose. It wasn't too late, so I headed out for the night with some friends while my BF at the time stayed in. I got dropped off around 1 a.m. or so, and as we were driving into the parking lot from afar, we see my neighbor outside in between cars and the apartment looking sorta odd. Okay, weird. Whatever, this guy is kinda just creepy anyways. At that point my friends were more weirded out than I was, but I didn't think much of it and had them drop me off near the entrance because it was easier for them to leave. That was until they drove away and I walked up to go into my apt, which I had to pass his first. I swear my heart dropped because he was standing still by then with his body hidden by the bush that is between our apartments, like the funny Homer Simpson meme, but actually not funny whatsoever, because as I approached, it seemed like he thought maybe I didn't see him because it was so dark out and he was still a statue. I waved and mumbled hi because I freaking see you, and I'm not going to pretend that I don't at this point, so don't even try anything since no one was out on a weekday at this hour. At that point, after acknowledging he was there, he stepped out of the side of the bush and came into the dim porch light, and never in my life have I looked into eyes like that. My heart is racing as I type this. They were widened, dark, fully dilated, just like a wild animal, almost lunatic if I were to express his energy as well. He didn't say anything but give me a bone-chilling look, and I ran into my apartment immediately. My BF was drowsy since it was late, but he did say neighbor's music was loud and continued for some time, and he heard a ton of noise and arguing earlier but didn't think anything of it. That night, all night we heard thumps, and it also sounded like furniture was moving. Now, it just weirded me out knowing he was awake in the state I viewed him in, which seemed almost primal. The next morning I heard the cops outside banging on his door and was partially relieved to see them, but then super scared of why they were there in the first place. They took him away in handcuffs shortly after, demanding to be let in, and asked me when was the last time I had talked or seen him, and I told him about that night, the arguing, noises, frightening encounter, and thumping all night. What I found out during the next day will make my stomach turn forever. I was told this from the groundskeeper. Details I will keep simple since it was horrendous. That Motown James Brown listening neighbor brutally murdered his GF that night, dismembered parts of her and dragged the rest of her body near the train tracks which was directly behind our apartments. It hit me that the cold, primal, and wide-eyed look I had seen in that man was that of a person who just took another human being's life. In such a vicious, disgusting way. I felt so sad for this woman who did not deserve to go like that. She was always quiet, sweet, and seemed a bit down on her luck, usually asking for cigarettes when I encountered her. To this day my stomach turns thinking about how close I was to death, quite literally, and how he could have ambushed me out of insanity since he was just waiting in the darkness when I walked up. Basically, to all of you who follow their intuition and gut feeling, listen to it. If you have a bad feeling about someone, even if they seem harmless, stay a safe distance the hell away from them. I moved into a different apartment right after because it was too much thinking about what had happened. That neighbor went to jail and I saw his booking photo, so damn scary to see him again, and I just hope he's staying in jail where he belongs.